Okay, so in this lesson, we're going to talk about 5 angle relationships that are important in geometry. Okay, so again, 5 angle relationships. Our first one we're going to talk about is something called vertical angles. And if we zoom in here, vertical angles are 2 angles that are across from each other on intersecting lines. These are always congruent. So let me draw this. So here's a line, and here's a line. They intersect. Okay, so 2 intersecting lines, and then we would have some angles that are formed. You can see there are 4 angles. The ones that are across from them, each other, are called vertical angles. So this angle, 1 and 2. These 2 are called vertical angles. They are across from each other, and they will always be congruent. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. By the same token, then this angle right here, let's say angle 3, and this is angle 4, those are also across from each other, and they are also vertical angles. They would also be congruent. So angle 3 would then be congruent to angle 4. These are called vertical angles. Okay, so if I look at this picture right here, if this angle here is 112, I know across from it then that would also have to be 112. So x would have to be 112 degrees. So that's simply vertical angles. And you can make this a little bit more difficult by adding in the algebra to it, but ultimately the premise is exactly the same. So let's take a look at this problem on this slide. It says, if the measure of angle PQT, so PQT is this one right here, is 3x plus 47. So I'm going to just put that in there, 3x plus 47 degrees. And SQR is 6x minus 25. So there we go. Find the measure of SQR. So find what 6x minus 25 would be equal to. So in this case, we would need to solve for x. Now we do know that these 2 have to be equal to each other because they are vertical angles. So I want to set those equal to each other. I'm going to say 3x plus 47 is equal to 6x minus 25. Okay, now let's solve this. I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. I get 47 equals 3x minus 25. And then I want to add 25 to both sides. Oops. I'm going to add 25. There we go. Okay, so this would be 72 equals 3x. All right, and then I want to divide by 3. So 72 divided by 3 would give me, what, 24. Okay, so x is 24. Now I need to find the measure of SQR. So SQR is 6x minus 25. So I'm going to go 6 times 24 minus 25. Multiply 6 times 24 and subtract 25. So if I do that, type that into my calculator, I'm going to write a measure of angle SQR. I get 119 degrees. Okay, so again, I know that those are equal to each other because they're vertical angles, and angles across from each other are always congruent. Okay, so those are vertical angles, an important pair of angles. All right, the next one here is adjacent angles. Adjacent, if you recall, just means next to, and you can see here this, I've already bolded this. You might want to highlight that as well. That just means next to. So an example of adjacent angles would simply be something like this, where I have angle 1 and angle 2, and they are next to each other, and they share a common side. So you can see right here would be the angle that they, or the side that they share. But that means adjacent angles. Those are next to each other. And you can see here's another picture of that. That's a little bit more well drawn than what I just drew there. But those are adjacent angles. Okay, a linear pair, this happens to be two angles that are adjacent, so next to each other, and also supplementary. Remember, supplementary means 180 degrees. Now, they do form a straight line. So if you recall, a straight line then, all straight angles are 180 degrees. So really when we say this, we're saying supplementary and straight line both mean, or at least should mean in your head, they form a straight line, and that means 180 degrees. So what we want to do is just draw a picture of this. It might be something kind of like this, okay? Let's say here's, now that's a straight line on the bottom there. Let's say this is angle 1 and this is angle 2. Now, what this means is those two angles, angle 1 plus angle 2, should equal 180 degrees, okay? Always. And that's a linear pair, right? The word line or linear there has the word line in it, and that means straight line, which we know is 180 degrees. So in this instance up here where I have this picture, I want to look at, okay, I already know that part of this is 124. I know that these two together better equal 180. So what I would do then is I would go 180 minus 124, and that would tell me what x is. So that then would be 56. So x is equal to 56 degrees. Okay, so that's the premise behind a linear pair. Okay, so again, looking at this picture and this diagram here in algebra, right? If I have the measure of KNM, so this angle, if that is 8x minus 5, I'm going to write that in there, 8x minus 5, and M and J is 4x minus 19. So in here, this is 4x minus 19. Now, because those two angles, you can see these two angles right there, add up to be a straight line, they form this straight line, I know that those two added together have to equal 180. So that's how I want to set this up. I'm going to write that out. So let's do that. I'm going to write 8x minus 5 plus 4x minus 19. Those together should equal 180. So I'm saying this plus this equals 180. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, again, combine like terms before we start solving. So I'm going to go, let's see, 8x and 4x is 12x. And then negative 5 and negative 19 is negative 24. And that should equal 180. Okay, I want to solve this by adding 24 to both sides. And so we have 12x equals 204. Okay, divide by 12 on both sides. And we get x equals, type that into your calculator, we get 17. Okay. Now, we know what x is, and now they're asking us to find the measure of angle KNM. Okay, so that KNM is 8x minus 5, so I'm going to say 8 times 17 minus 5. And then we're going to type that into our calculators. That would be 8 times 17 is 136 minus 5 is 131. Okay, so the measure of angle K and M is 131 degrees. Okay, there we go. So linear pair, two angles that add up to be 180 degrees. An important pair, again, in geometry. Now this you probably have heard of before, but supplementary means any two angles who add up to be 180 degrees. So sum is 180 degrees. Oftentimes, they don't have to be next to each other. They don't have to be adjacent, but you'll see in a lot of the problems that we do that they often are. So a linear pair that we talked about before is an example of supplementary angles because it has to add up to 180. So maybe this is 135 degrees and this is 45. Because those two add up to be 180 degrees, we know that they're supplementary. So supplementary means adds up to be 180. So we can use what we've learned, vertical angles and linear pairs, supplementary, to solve something like this. So how do we figure out what X, Y, and Z are? So let's say, I'm gonna write these out, X, Y, Z. Okay, now we know that these two are vertical angles, so they have to be congruent. So I already know that Y has to be 43 degrees. Okay, now let's go for X. I know that these two, 43 and X, have to add up to 180 because that's right there forms a straight line, which is 180 degrees. It's a linear pair. So I want to say, what does that equal, right? So to figure that out, I would go 180 minus 43. So that would be 137. Okay, so now if that's 137, I know that these are vertical angles. They have to be the same. So that means Z is 137 as well. So just by knowing a little bit about vertical angles, linear pair, and supplementary, we can figure out those angles, all three of those angles. Okay. All right, so here it says angle P and angle Q are supplementary angles. So again, that means they add up to 180. And they tell us what P and Q are. P is 4x plus 1, and Q is 9x minus 3. Find the measure of angle Q. Well, they're supplementary, so I want to think adds up to 180. So I'm going to say, I know that 4x plus 1 plus 9x minus 3, that has to equal 180 degrees. Okay, so, and now I want to solve for x so that I can figure out what Q is. But here we go. So we're going to combine like terms. We get 13x, and then 1 minus 3 is negative 2. We're going to add 2 to both sides, so I have 13. I guess I should write that. So that's 182, not 80, 182. There we go. All right, and then I want to divide by 13, divide by 13. So I'm going to say 182 divided by 13 on my calculator, and I get 14. Okay, so now I'm trying to find the measure of angle Q, which is this one. So now I'm going to say 9 times 14 minus 3. That's 126 minus 3 is 123. So the measure of angle Q is 123 degrees. All right, so we did it. All right, complementary angles, these are ones that add up to 90 degrees. So sum is 90. So you probably remember this. This is when you see a right angle and you're putting them together. So let's just draw a picture here. Okay, so I have two angles. This forms one angle that forms a 90, but there's another line in here somewhere, like this. So I have really two angles. This is 1 and this is 2. And those two, when you put them together, they should add up to be 90. So much like this picture that you see here. So if I want to know what is this, I know it's 90 degrees because I see this little symbol in the corner there. So I would just say 90 minus 68. So you're going to go, what is that? And that's going to give you 22. So x equals 22 degrees. Okay. Now let's see if we can do this. This one looks kind of tricky. So let's see if we can handle this one. And there's kind of a lot going on, but I think we got it. All right. It says, if AB, line AB, is perpendicular to CD. So I'm just going to put that right angle in there right away. I know that those form a 90-degree angle. The measure of angle DCE is 7x plus 2. And the measure of angle ECB is x plus 8. So that goes here. Okay, now find the measure of DCE. Okay, so I know because this angle is 90 degrees, that means this part right here, DCB, has to be 90, right? Because I know that's a straight line that has to add up to 180. So the other one also has to be 90. So I'm going to say then that 7x plus 2 plus x plus 8 has to be equal to 90 degrees. Okay. So now I'm going to combine some like terms and we're going to solve. So if I go 7x plus x, that's a 1x, remember? That's the same as a 1x, so that's 8x. And then 2 plus 8 is 10. I'm going to subtract 10 from both sides. I get 8x equals 80. Divide by 8, divide by 8, x equals 10. Okay, now we need to find the measure of DCE, which is 7x plus 2. So let's go over here. Okay, so DCE, we're going to go 7 times 10 plus 2. So this is 70 plus 2. The measure of angle DCE equals 72 degrees. And we did it. All right. So these are all the pairs that are important in our geometry unit that we're starting. Those are the ones you really need to know. You should be able to tackle this assignment now. And we're good. All right. Take care.